so I'm going to start off with a little story. So as a kid, my mom used to make me and my sister share so many things. And it got to a point where it was so extreme, I thought we were about to share the same clothes. And I know you guys are all familiar with the phrase, sharing is caring. And that's something my mom used to always tell me and my sister, that, oh, sharing is caring, it's better. Well, I hated that. And when I was younger, when something was given to me, I didn't want to share anything. It was mine. It was in my possession. So why would I want to give it to somebody else? And possession is kind of a funny thing, because why do we value something so much that's in our own possession? For example, I have this bracelet. I value this more than any other bracelet right now that's not in my possession. It's here, it's present, it's now. Yet if I were to sell this, if I decided to sell this bracelet, this is where things get a little interesting. Because you can bet that I'm going to give or want a pretty high price for this bracelet, because this is mine and I need something in return. And this is what, ladies and gentlemen, is called the endowment effect. And to define the endowment effect, it's when people give a higher value to the objects that they own. Now, past research has looked into when this occurs and why this occurs. One researcher called Geraghty looked into this, looking for self-threat and self-enhancement as a factor on the endowment effect. And what I mean by this is they hypothesized that when being endowed with an object, the selling of the object will lead to a perception of self-threat, which in turn causes one to have a self-enhancement of that object. The results of this study found that participants did in fact self-enhance the value of that item when posed with the option of selling the item. In this case, it was a coffee mug. So therefore, the endowment effect did occur. Another study by Manson and Levy looked to see if instructional language could cause an endowment effect. They manipulated the wording in two different conditions. There was a selling condition and an exchange condition. In the selling condition, participants were endowed with a set of pens and asked to pick a bottom line price ranging from 50 cents to $14 in which they'd sell the pens back. In the exchange conditions, participants were also endowed with the same pens and asked for a price on how much money they would take for those pens. Consistent with their hypothesis, they found that participants willing to accept an amount of money was higher in the selling condition than in the exchange condition, which supports that people, when they were endowed with it and they were going to sell it, they valued it much higher than when it was more of a bargain, kind of free change exchange. So during our research, we kind of noticed that most of the past research, has shown the endowment effect with just one item. Except if you look for the Manson and Levy, you can kind of either take it as a set of pen was one set, one item, or that the set of pens was multiple items within that. However, they were more interested in looking at instructional language and how that affects the endowment effect. We came up with the idea that, well, what if the quantity could affect the endowment effect? So in other words, we wanted to focus on if varying quantities of an item could cause one to have an endowment effect. So, our research question was, does varying the quantity of an endowed object affect an individual's value of that object? And we hypothesized that an increase in quantity of an object will decrease an individual's value of that object. So to find this out, we set up an online survey to test college students at Illinois Wesleyan University. And to give more further detail about the methods and procedure of our study, I'll now introduce my colleague, Mr. Vic Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. Each participant received a Facebook message that contained a link to the survey. The survey assessed each individual's motivation to buy or sell one beer. The first question asked each individual to indicate his or her age. The next two questions asked each individual to indicate their gender and whether or not they drink beer. If the person is under the age of 18 or did not drink beer, they're excluded from the study. The next question asked the individual to answer typically how many beers they consume in one setting. For this question, the answers were on an interval scale ranging up to 13 or more beers in intervals of 3. This question was included to determine whether amount of consumption will would influence the results. There are 144 participants included in the study. 65 participants were male and 79 participants were female. Each participant was randomly assigned to 2 conditions. The selling condition included 73 participants, and the buying beer condition included 71 participants. In both conditions, the individual was given a hypothetical situation. In the buying condition, the scenario was, imagine you attend an off-campus house party, you show up to the party, and here's someone that's selling beer, Bud Light, having not consumed any alcoholic beverage. You approach the person to buy 1 beer off of them. How much would you buy a beer Bud Light if? Each participant was following the scenario, each participant had to answer 3 questions. Each participant was given 3 questions in randomized order to counterbalance for the order effects. In the first question, the person who is selling the beer has a full pack of 18 Bud Lights. How much would you pay for 1 beer? In the second question, the person has 6 beers left. How much would you pay for 1 beer? In the third question, the person selling the beer has 1 beer left. How much would you pay for 1 beer? Each question included an interval scale up to $3 and intervals of 20 cents. The sub of the selling condition was the exact same of that of the buying condition, except you are the actual individual selling the 1 beer. After completing either the buying or selling condition, each participant was thanked for their participation. And in order to discuss the results, I would like to introduce my colleague, Tillie Bill.
Thank you, Vic. Our results indicate a main effect for number of beers. As you can see, as the beer decreases, the price increases in both the sell and buy condition. We also found a main effect for the buy and sell conditions. As you can see in the sell condition, each average is greater than that of the buy condition. Looking at the graphs, we found a significant interaction between the condition and number of beers in the beer 6 and beer 1 condition. In the beer 18, we see that the distributions are very similar, but as we move to the beer 6 and beer 1 condition, the sell condition starts to significantly increase compared to that of the buy condition. We also found a main effect for gender. Looking at the bar graphs, we see that males and females differ significantly in their buying and selling prices. In addition, we found an interaction between gender and the condition. Interestingly, in the buy condition, females were willing to pay more than men in all conditions besides beer 6. In the sell condition, but when we look at the sell condition, males' asking price was higher than that of the females in all conditions. Here, our main results are outlined. We also found a significant interaction between condition and age, and condition and how much. We excluded these findings for various reasons. And in conclusion, individuals endowed with an object increase their value of that object when they are endowed with too much of that object. And next, we have Declan and Geraghty talking about our strengths and weaknesses of our study.
Hello, everyone. So, you may be asking yourselves, why did we decide to use a survey to get this information? First off, as researchers, there is no way we would ever get invited to a college party. And even if we did, it is difficult to observe and document these transactions. An experimental setting would suffice, but participants would sacrifice anonymity, in our opinion, that could affect the data, not to mention it's just easier to reach our population of interest with the survey. There are numerous advantages conducting an online survey in comparison to paper surveys. Online surveys are easier to administer, cost-effective, and basically anyone with a computer has access. With the aid of Facebook and other forms of social media, we are able to reach our population of interest. Qualtrics, an online survey website, made the process of developing the survey quick and easy. Additionally, Qualtrics enabled our group to do many different types of data collection and analysis. The Qualtrics software is reliable and is cited in many academic journals and books. As researchers exploring the endowment effect, we were very pleased with the results being in line with our hypothesis. In regards to the survey itself, we addressed the validity issues through attention to detail and standardization. Here's an example of the survey. As you can see, all the questions and scenarios are standardized, worded exactly the same, and the only manipulated portion is how many beers there are in the condition, quantity. Each participant was given one condition, either a buy condition or a sell condition. That takes out the threat of ordering effect. Here's a demographic sheet that we questioned the participants at the beginning. With the aid of Qualtrics software, we were able to collect demographics of the participants. The demographics gave us flexibility to analyze the data in numerous ways. Finally, our survey took less than 5 minutes, and as a result, fatigue should not come into play. All these factors allow us to claim causation rather than correlation between variables of interest. There was limitations. Our survey was not perfect. As I explained, we as researchers did our best to address all possibilities, weaknesses, but some were unavoidable. However, there are things that should be taken into consideration when assessing our findings. First off, our sample is relatively small. We received 161 responses from people born between 1990 and 1995. Technically, this wasn't a limitation for generalizing to the subset of the population, but is a problem when you're generalizing to the general public. The people targeted attend a small liberal arts university and have similar socioeconomic status. This is an intentional sampling bias. We want to generalize to the entire population. We must get more representative sample of the general population. Unavoidable structure flaws in the survey format, such as closed-ended responses and predetermined increments, could affect how participants answered. And folks, last but not least, there's a possibility that some students had a previous knowledge of the endowment effect, such as students in an experimental cognitive psychology class at a small liberal arts university with a professor named Ellen Furlong. But this would be a hypothetical example. Knowledge like this would result in some sort of response bias. Based on the results of our study, future research should consider examining different populations, such as graduates, elderly, or even children. Other groups of interest would be those of various cultures to see whether or not the endowment effect would happen if people of different cultures had more than one of a particular item. Future studies should also examine whether or not owning more than one of a particular item, other than beer, would produce the endowment effect. It would also be interesting to examine whether more expensive items would render the same results that we acquired in this study. This concludes our TED Talk on the impact of quantity and the endowment effect. Thanks for listening. You stay classy, San Diego.